The early days of aviation are littered with aircraft designs, sometimes quite literally, that have more than 3 wings. We call these multiplanes. One such was the aircraft that's the kit of the week this week, the Zerbe Air Sedan, which had 4 wings in a staggered close-coupled system. I'll be having a look at some of the other multiplane aircraft of the early days of aviation, and we can learn that maybe some of them weren't quite as crazy as they first look. I mean, initially you think 1 wing good, 2 wings must be better, 3 wings better than that, and so just keep adding wings and everything is absolutely perfect. It doesn't quite work as simply as that, but we'll find out more right here on Gary's Stuff. Hello there, today is the context video for the kit of the week, and that kit this week is the Zerbe Air Sedan in 1/48 scale from Avis. Now, because this is the only kit of the Zerbe Air Sedan and there was only one Zerbe Air Sedan, it would make a pretty short history video otherwise. This is it and this is it. Thank you and good night. So I thought I'd look at the history of some multiplanes of the era, and indeed why some of them were reasonably good ideas and others, frankly, were atrocious ideas. If you like the video, and I hope you do, please remember, give it the imperial thumbs up on the like button below, because every like counts. And if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the channel and hit that bell. You'll be notified of all my future videos as they turn up, including the build video for the kit of the week. And of course, if you'd like to offer a bit more concrete support, you can do that through Super Thanks, by becoming a channel member, or indeed through using any of my online partner programs. The kit of the week I'm making, incidentally, was donated by Nick Johnson, so thank you very much, Nick. Let's make a start then and have a look at the history of the multiplane. The first few decades of powered flight saw many new designs featuring more than 3 wings. Very few of these are successful for a variety of reasons, but for a while the multiplane seemed to some the perfect solution to many of flight's problems. The idea was simple: more wings equals more lift. Lift depends, amongst other things, on wingspan, but early structural design prevented very long wings, so make more wings and stack them up. Simple, although it isn't. The complex interplay of airflow from multiple surfaces and the stability issues these would bring were beyond the aerodynamics of the day, and the huge induced drag from so many wings was often beyond the power available from contemporary engines. However, as biplanes and triplanes appeared to work so well, it was natural to assume more wings would work. The first true multiplane was created by Hiram Maxim in the 1890s. His steam-powered machine started as a biplane and had more and more wings added. The machine ran along the rails of a test rig and never flew, although on one occasion the lift was enough to damage the retaining rails. Horatio Phillips experimented with the multiplane from around 1893 in test rigs, but by 1904 had an aircraft with 20 stacked wings that managed a few brief hops. In 1907, he was able to get his multiplane 2, a beast with 4 stacks, each of 50 wings, off the ground for a run of about 500 feet. This was technically the first powered flight in the UK, albeit with almost no control. Taking the multiplane concept to its illogical conclusion was the AEA Signet of 1909, which used a wing of 3,393 tetrahedral cells as lifting centres. Designed by Alexander Graham Bell, yes, of telephone fame, the concept worked as a kite and when towed behind a motorboat, although it was difficult to control. As a self-powered aircraft, it couldn't get airborne. A later, smaller version, the Signet 3, only managed to get a couple of feet off the ground, and when its structure collapsed after one test, the whole idea was abandoned. Slightly more sensibly, perhaps, the American Matthew Sellers began experiments with a 4-winged aircraft in 1909. His aim was to fly using as little power as possible. He eventually managed to fly using just 5 horsepower, albeit at a leisurely 20 miles per hour. Later in the UK, Pemberton Billing Limited made two prototype Zeppelin hunters during World War I. The larger of these was the PB-31E, later called the Nighthawk when the company transformed into Supermarine. These large twin-engine fighters were far too slow even to catch up a Zeppelin, and they never quite met their altitude performance, so they were never put into production. One quadruplane that did reach production was the Armstrong Whitworth FK-10. A contract for some of these was issued, but as they turned out to be inferior to the existing Sopwith 1.5 strutter, they weren't used operationally, and in the end just a handful were built. Something more experimental was the Friedrichshafen FF-54 fighter. This used two narrow wings placed between conventional upper and lower surfaces, but to little added effect. The aircraft had very poor performance and was never produced. Likewise, late in the First World War was the Naglo D2, which looks like a triplane with a smaller fourth wing added underneath as an afterthought. Now, although praised for its construction, it again performed very poorly and was abandoned. Something that almost qualified as a quadruplane was the Besson H5 transport of 1922. This had two sets of biplane wings, one set very close behind and lower than the other in a kind of zigzag arrangement. It was relatively stable, but after an accident during testing, the project was abandoned. More adventurous still was the frankly insane Johns multiplane of 1919. This was essentially a huge triplane bomber, but with a biplane spliced in front and two extra wings added behind. It made a few hops, lifted by these 7 wings, but essentially was uncontrollable and was scrapped after an early accident. Stacked or staggered multiplanes were also tested. The Zerbe sextuplane of 1908 had 6 wings staggered along the upper surface. No record survives of the sextuplane's performance, I imagine because it didn't have any. His 5-winged multiplane of 1910 was no better. It stormed across a field at the Los Angeles International Air Meet before hitting a hole and crashing. It was a concept he would revive in the Zerbe Air Sedan of 1918, albeit with just the 4 staggered wings. In 1921, the aircraft managed to get into the air briefly before the forward wing collapsed and the aircraft crashed. The pilot was unharmed, but the Air Sedan never flew again. In Switzerland in 1908, the Defoe tandem biplane was constructed. This had 2 triplane stacks in a staggered tandem layout with a biplane tail. Dr. Anthony Fokker, design genius behind the DR-1 triplane of Red Baron fame, also had his off days in the office. Around the same time of his most famous aircraft, he also designed the V8. This had a triplane in tandem with a mid-mounted biplane. It barely flew. When the project was abandoned, Reinhold Platz, Fokker's chief designer, refused to discuss the aircraft ever again. The daddy of tandem multiplanes has to be the astonishing Caproni CA60 Noviplano. This had 9 wings in 3 triplane sets and was powered by 8 engines. It was intended to be a 100-seat transatlantic flying boat. Initial tests suggested that nose ballast was needed, but when the aircraft took off for its first flight, the ballast shifted, the nose pitched violently backwards, and it stalled into the water. Now, although the crew escaped unharmed, the aircraft was damaged beyond any economical repair. And finally, we should mention the stereotype multiplane, the human-powered Gerhardt cycleplane. This is the one featured so often collapsing during taxiing. It turns out that structural knowledge is just as important as enthusiasm after all. There we go then. Quite a lot of variety, quite a lot of strange ideas, quite a lot of interesting ideas. There's reasons why you don't see multiplanes around now. And that reason is aerodynamics. The study and knowledge of aerodynamics is so much more advanced now. We can make things that can fly incredibly slowly. We can make things that fly incredibly slowly, then fly incredibly quickly at really efficient altitudes and so on and so forth. We can tailor aircraft a lot more to their needs with one or at the very most two wings. Normally just one will do. We also have much better propulsion technology than they had available. I mean, the Zerbe was flying on a 110 horsepower Lerone engine left over from World War One. There's not an awful lot of thrust for something with four wings. But you know what? Just like with any endeavour in science and engineering, there's going to be some times when people take a different look at a subject and approach it from a different angle. And you know what? That angle is absolutely spot on. Just look at the advances that were made in Germany towards the end of the Second World War, and indeed slightly before that. A lot of people poo-pooed the idea of a swept wings, a wing with a swept leading edge, saying it would give no aerodynamic advantage at all. It gave a significant one, especially when you start getting close to the speed of sound, as you can see on a lot of aircraft, indeed pretty much every airliner that's flying today, amongst other things. So, yeah, we can't just look back and laugh and say, how stupid were they? Some of them actually were coming from sensible places. Some were coming from less informed places, let's say, and be kind to them. Anyway, I hope it was educational. I hope it's entertaining as well. If it was, please do remember, give it the imperial thumbs up on the like button below because every like counts. And if you haven't done so yet, please do subscribe to the channel, hit that bell and you'll be notified of all my future videos as they turn up, including the build video for this kit. Thank you so very much for watching. Hope to see you again very soon. Take care now and goodbye.